Hi, it's Vernon. Welcome to a very special compilation edition of Tracks of My Years as we prepare to celebrate Elton John's final UK performance at Glastonbury. Ever since Elton started playing piano on sessions for bands like the Hollies and answered an advert in the NME in 1967, he's been a musical superstar, selling more than 300 million records worldwide and having the biggest selling single of all time with Candle in the Wind. Since launching his first tour in 1970, Elton has performed more than 4,600 times in more than 80 countries. We have a host of stars who've chosen some of Elton's greatest hits on Tracks of My Years, and we start with Dean Friedman, who you'll remember from hits like Lucky Stars and Lydia. He's a huge admirer of Elton and his songwriting partner, Bernie Taupin.
He possesses the uncanny ability to wed his music perfectly to Bernie Taupin's lyrics. And the great thing about Taupin's lyrics is they're almost not even lyrics. What I mean by that is their power comes from the fact of how natural and almost haltingly conversational they are. That line, you see, I've forgotten if they're green or they're blue. Anyway, the thing is, what I really mean, that's how people talk. For me, that's a key ingredient of what makes your songs such an amazing classic record.
It's a little bit funny, this feeling.
The breakthrough song that everyone knows, Your Song, a favourite of actress Linda Gray. Did you know that as well as playing Sue Ellen in Dallas, she was the owner of the legs modelled on the famous poster for the film The Graduate? Linda chose both Your Song and our next Elton classic, Tiny Dancer.
I love songs that appeal to your heart. I think Elton has that quality that he taps into the smaller things in life and expands them to touch you emotionally. Everything that he does, for me anyway, is an expansion. And I think, isn't that lovely? Tiny Dancer and things like that were always put a little smile on my face or a tear in my eye. Those were the kinds of things. Those are the moments.
DJ Pete Tong also has memories of Tiny Dancer from his school days.
In the school playground, you were either into T-Rex or into Slade. Bowie was a massive, massive influence. Roxy Music as well. And Elton doesn't often get talked about in the same breath, but he was there. He was there through that whole time. This record is just insanely good and so clever. And you don't hear many records like that these days. So I just, props to Elton John. It's just be great to hear it again.
And Toto's founding guitarist and songwriter, Steve Lukather, has recorded with Aretha Franklin, Earth, Wind & Fire, Michael Jackson, George Benson, and more than 1,500 records over 36 years. He's also witnessed Elton working and writing.
I've had the chance to work with Elton, and I've actually watched him write a song, which is interesting. You see a legendary guy like this, hands on the piano, start singing the lyrics he's never seen before. I watched this through the glass. It was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. To show you how gifted this guy is, he wrote a song right before my very eyes, and we ended up cutting it the next day for the 21 at 33 album back in the day. But Tiny Dancer's been one of my favorite songs, It was the opening track off Madman Across the Water. And it was in the movie and all that stuff, which we all love. But it's one of those things, it's part of my childhood. You have these songs that remind you of a great summer, coming-of-age music. And once again, I never knew that I'd be in the same room with Elton,
Blue jean baby, L.A. lady.
It's Vernon Kay with a special compilation edition of Tracks of My Years, featuring songs composed and performed by Sir Elton John. Here's another classic from the early days of Elton's career, with perfect and memorable lyrics by his lifelong friend and collaborator Bernie Taupin, as chosen by rising star Freya Ridings.
There's just something about the way he captures that kind of universal human loneliness, but also overcoming that I just find you never stop being healed by it. Hearing it, to me, especially now doing this job and being on tour, I kind of understand the mindset even more. It's a universal mindset, but especially being a touring musician, I understand how you do feel kind of separate from the rest of your life, and you do feel like you're almost like an astronaut. And I was like, wow, I really resonate with this song on another level now. I love him.
And Jimmy Webb, the genius behind Wichita Lineman and MacArthur Park.
I think it's an important song, and I'm a great fan of Bernie's and Sir Elton's. And I think that it's a future folk song. It's sort of telling everyone, hey, all this science I don't understand, it's just my job 8 days a week. It will become a job just like anybody else's job. So it's It's sort of a song that's a little bit in the future. It's exciting. It's an unbelievable vocal performance from Elton John, especially at the ending. And all the elements are there for a fantastic record and also a kind of emotional experience.
She packed my bags last night, pre-flight. And I think it's gonna be a long time.
Time for that huge seller, Candle in the Wind. Originally written about Marilyn Monroe, but reimagined to pay tribute to the late Princess Diana in 1997. It was first performed in Westminster Abbey and then recorded and produced by Sir George Martin as a commercial release. And it's this version, which also won a Grammy in 1998, that Craig David loves.
Probably one of my favourite songs of all time. I think lyrically, the way in which him and Bernie Taupin wrote songs, I always still to this day find amazing that you can be just given lyrics and then to put melodies to the lyrics. So it was how the song was put together. Obviously, the original being about Marilyn Monroe, and then the way in which he changed the lyrics for Princess Diana. The melody, it crossed all the right marks for me. And also the way in which it had the same sentiment for both artists that he was talking about. And Elton John just has that magical way about him that he's able to make a song so poignant that when it connects in a way that, for me, I felt like if I could have written any song in the world, that would be the song I'd like to have written. As much as I love R&B and hip-hop and pop music, it's just a classic song that once Elton John passes away, once I pass away, once we all pass away, that song will still be relevant to the next generation of people. So I just think it was a wonderful, wonderful song.
Goodbye, England's rose, may you ever grow.
Now, like a lot of us, singer-songwriter Dan Gillespie Sells of The Feeling spent his childhood surrounded by Elton's albums and singles. He's chosen a beautiful ballad from 1975.
When I was growing up, my dad had 2 Elton records, and one of them was Captain Fantastic and the Brown Dirt Cowboy, and that was just an album that I just kind of knew back to front. It was always very kind of musical, very dramatic and kind of theatrical, and it does a lot of stuff in pop music which I love, which is real emotion. I've always been a fan of Elton's. I think he's brilliant.
It's Vernon Kay with an Elton John Tracks of My Years special. Many of these songs have emotional connections to our guests, but this one has a professional link to the great Lionel Richie.
There's a guy named Gene Page that no one, when you say Philadelphia Freedom, you think of Elton John, but there's a guy named Gene Page who was the arranger for Philadelphia Freedom, who was also the arranger for Endless Love and Truly. So I always think of this. When I walked in the door, he had just finished doing the Philadelphia Freedom. And, of course, he was all on a high about that. And of course, he said, what do you want me to do? And I said, I've got this thing with Diana Ross. What do you think? What Gene was known for was high strings above the staff. They were up in the ozone. And if you listen to Philadelphia Freedom, the strings are way out and up there. And, of course, if you hear Endless Love, the same thing, and, of course, Truly, the same thing. So I picked Philadelphia Freedom as a tribute to Gene, number one, but also, again, from a songwriter's point of view, Elton and Bernie, come on.
I used to be a rolling stone, Don't you know
Now, here's a great Elton song, which was the first single taken from 1983's Too Low for Zero album with Stevie Wonder on harmonica, much admired by the soul legend Sam Moore.
Elton is I would call him my gospel playing Billy Preston. Some of the things that he does, that's why they call it the blues and all that. I don't think a lot of people understand how well this guy can really play. Not only is he a great artist vocally, but he can really play. And he's Elton. And I'm crazy about him.
Don't wish it away, don't look at it like it's. And I guess that's why they call it the blues.
Elton is, of course, well known for his wide circle of friends, including the Beckhams, and Victoria Beckham appeared on Tracks of My Years in 2002, 6 months after Elton John's Songs from the West Coast had been released. And she was very taken by the video of the song I Want Love. It featured actor Robert Downey Jr.
This is a great song. I mean, apart from being very close personal friends with Elton, I think this new album is fantastic. He's taken it back to basics. This is a fantastic first single off the album. And, I love the video as well. This is a great video.
I want love but it's impossible.
It's Vernon with a special Elton John compilation from Tracks of My Years to celebrate his Glastonbury appearance. Here's Benny and the Jets, which brings back childhood memories for both Yola and Curtis Stigers.
I grew up listening to Elton John. My mother loved Elton John, and I remember playing the Honky Chateau record, but there are a few other records and a best of that my mother had. And I really loved this song. I just danced like an idiot to it. There were loads of songs that I loved a lot, but this one would like toddler bum shaking dancing. That's how I danced to this.
Benny and the Jets by Elton John. It was the first song that ever made me say, I got to go buy that album. I heard that when I was a young kid, and I still hear it, and it kills me. You know, you figure your first album you'd maybe have grown out of, and I how could you grow out of Goodbye Yellow Brick Road? So, and Benny and the Jets, when you hear that dun 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 of Elton's piano at the beginning of it, it murders me. I could also sing you every lyric to probably every song by Elton John off of every album, at least for his first 10 or 11 albums. So I could get through the whole lyric on this one easily.
Hey, kid, shake loose the devil's ball.
Donny Osmond has great musical taste, and he chose the track which has given its title to Elton's 333-date farewell tour. Goodbye, Yellow Brick Road.
I don't think you could ever pick a top 10 list and leave Elton John out of there, because he has more hit records than anybody else in the world. And which one do you pick? They're all just great, but it says a lot lyrically.
When are you gonna come down?
We end our special look at Elton's influence and effect on so many other musicians and stars with singer-songwriters Tom Grennan and Tom Robinson. And another song with a great video featuring Bruno Tonioli and filmed on the French Riviera. Get your Speedos on.
Elton John for me is just a legend, hero, and this song reminds me of my friend and being at a party. And obviously I'd heard this song when I was younger and stuff like that, but I didn't take much notice of it. And then it wasn't until like 3 or 4 years ago where I actually kind of was like, wow, this is unbelievable. And the way he's saying, I'm still standing, and I'm going to take on the whole world, and no one's going to take what I am and who I am away from me. And I think for me that resonates in me, and I just think I stand for that too. And it just gets me buzzing, and like I say, it resonates in me, and I'll always love Elton John for that.
At the end of 1978, the Tom Robinson Band had just kind of made a name for itself, and I got invited to take part in a photo shoot for the Guinness Book of Hit Records. And they'd assembled people from across the years and decades who'd had hits. Cliff Richard was there, the Drifters were there, Dave Dee, Dozy Beaky, Mick and Ditch were there, Bob Geldof, Billy Idol, and Elton John was one of the people there, and I expected to hate him, and he expected to hate me because he'd read me being mouthy in the music press, and I'd heard about him being excessive and overdramatic in the tabloids. But he was a lovely geezer, and we ended up writing songs together. So when my own career crashed and burned in the kind of late 70s, early 80s, the songs I wrote with Elton kept me alive. And then after he'd gone back to writing with Bernie, he came back with I'm Still Standing, which I think is his greatest record of all time. I mean, it's a wonderful statement of defiance. If you thought this fool could never win, well, look at me, I'm coming back again. His best record, I think. I always have a big, stupid grin whenever I hear this.
You can never know what it's like. Your blood like winter freezes just like
I'm Still Standing, just one of the brilliant Elton hits selected in Tracks of My Years here on Radio 2.